Hello once again, YouTube. I've been a busy boy lately, haven't I? Another in-face, in-person video from yours truly. Lucky you. Anyways, as you can tell, this is my next comics review. I wasn't going to go back until January because I got my last batch in late November, and I thought, how many issues are there going to be between late November and early December? But it turns out I got quite a few. I just checked in there. I was down there getting a gift card for somebody for Christmas, and so I popped in and checked my bag, and I had a bunch. So it's like, oh, I am getting a December review this month. So lucky you once again. First up, issue 123 of the ongoing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. And in this one, Leonardo is up in his little greenhouse above the dojo or whatever, working on his plants. Raph comes up to help him, and they get to talking, and they're like, oh man, we could like expand this operation and grow our own crops and help provide food for all of Mutant Town, and then we don't have to rely on bringing stuff in and stuff. We could be more self-reliant. So Leo's like, yeah, that's great, and he's starting to feel good, like, because he's been kind of lonely. But then Alapex comes up and is like, Raph, come hang out with me, right? So then that couple, they go off and do their own thing, watch a movie, whatever they're doing. So Leo kind of gets lonely, and as he's wandering through the dojo, he sees like Raph and Alapex together. He sees, I think, Donnie on some sort of conference call about whatever the tech he's working on or whatever, talking with his friends. Mike and some of the other mutants are playing a board game, and so everybody's kind of, Jenica's rocking it with her band, practicing, doing a jam session. So he's kind of like, everybody has their own kind of little side group and where they belong, and he's kind of lonely, right? So he goes out for a walk and ends up at a concert venue where he sees Casey Jones and Sheena outside. Sheena's the one who's dating Jenica, and he's like, "What are you two doing together?" He's like, "Oh, don't tell Jenny; she won't understand." And Leo's like, "Why? What's going on?" And then they go inside, and it's a fight club. Everybody's friendly there, but it's a fight club. They challenge each other, they fight and stuff. So Leo's like, "I don't know about this." And but they're like, "Can you please keep it a secret?" He's like, "Okay." So then Casey, after he fights, he eventually gets Leo to enter the ring, and he ends up squaring off against this female who he seems to have a bit of a crush on. So suddenly his spirits turn as he invites this female that he beats in combat to come to the dojo, and maybe he can teach her some of the moves. So all of a sudden his spirits lift, right? And then him and Casey hang out afterwards and talk about what's all kind of going on. Ugh. And stuff, and so that's kind of another lift to his spirits, hanging out with Casey and kind of reconnecting with him. So at the end of the night, Leo goes back to the dojo, and this time, as he's walking through the dojo and seeing everybody doing their own thing, this time he's happy instead of sad. But it ends on a sour note as the Weasels, Hob infiltrates the dojo again and approaches the Weasels and says he has another task for them to do. So more trouble's coming, and it's coming from Hob. Transformers is up next as usual, and also as usual, encompasses the most issues of the haul by far. We got a half dozen here of just Transformers, various types. So first up, issue number 10 in the ongoing Beast Wars series. In this one, it's very quick, very action-packed. It's basically Optimus Primal is like, you know what, I was wrong. I sat back. I let Megatron dictate the action. We've been attacked. We've had injuries, whatever. He says, I've misjudged the situation. We need to go on the offensive. Meanwhile, back at the Predacon camp, Terrorsaur is waxing off about how he's a better leader than Megatron, and Megatron's lost sight of their goals and whatever, and Megatron overhears him, and then there's a big brouhaha, but Scorponok, I think it is, Tarantulas, saves Terrorsaur at the last second and says, Megatron, don't be so hasty. He's still a useful bot, whatever, so he's saved. But as all this is happening, the Maximals have modified a ship, a cargo ship or something like that of theirs to become a transport for them to attack the dark side, the Predacon's ship. And so that's what they do. They go straight at the base, crash into it, and the Predacons are taken very much by surprise because they did not expect the Maximals to take decisive action. That's not their style, so they threw them a curveball, and it worked. And as the issue ends, we just see Optimus Primal climb out of the wreckage and say, "Where's Megatron?" right? So there's a confrontation coming between the two big boss bots, and I can't wait to see how it goes. Next up, number 4 of the King Grimlock series. In this one, you know, they just defeated the Red Wizard or whatever it was, so now they're marching on the Golden King. He's the ultimate baddie in this story so far. So Grimlock finds out along the way as they are approaching the Golden King's castle that he's not what he says he is. He's actually the blood that fuels him, the fuel that, or the life force that fuels him is actually corrupted energon that Grimlock has never tasted before. And although it almost poisoned him, he was able to overcome it, and he now has a better idea of what he's facing. So they approach the Golden King's castle, and they kind of throw the Golden King and Arco, the female that tried to appeal to Grimlock early in the series that turned against him, is now on the Golden King's side and is kind of her right-hand man, or his right-hand girl, I guess. So Grimlock approaches the castle all alone and kind of throws a feint, and they believe it because they think he's full of pride and whatever, and believes he can't be beaten, whatever. So he distracts them, and in the meantime, 2 of the humans that are going against the Golden King, they're sorcerers or something like that, so they put their magic together and force an eclipse to happen, blocking out the sun, which is what the Golden King draws his power from. So then that's when they attack, and the attack goes on and on and on, and eventually they are able to draw the life force behind the Golden King, Soltron. I can't remember what the name of it is, but there's an entity inside the Golden King that is the evil that's taken over, and Grimlock is able to draw it out of his body, and it becomes this big dragon. Grimlock defeats it, and then with no body left to go to, it actually corrupts Arco, the female, and then inhabits her body right at the end of the issue. So the saga is not over yet. The evil has just been displaced to another body, and we will see if Grimlock and his human charges are up to yet another battle, I'm assuming. Next up, we have 2 issues out of the Wreckers series. Issue number 2 and issue number 3. In issue 2, the Wreckers are on Velocitron, and you know they're entering the Speedia 500 to try and diffuse this terrorist group's threat, that Mayhem, the terrorist group that they made about causing all sorts of violence and whatnot, if the people of Velocitron don't give them what they want and institute a more democratic system. So at the start of the issue, they're just doing reconnaissance and kind of getting to know some of the participants in the Speedia 500 and checking out if maybe they're the terrorists or whatever. And so far, everybody's checking out. They're not getting much to go on. In the meantime, what's his name? Circuit, the member of the Wreckers that's kind of the techno guy who doesn't really fit in with the rest. He was the one at the end of the last issue who kind of went off on his own, and then he was approached by this mysterious bot, and I thought there was trouble coming. It wasn't trouble. It was a guy named Axer who had some sort of a history with Circuit, and he was apologizing for hanging him out to dry or something like that, and he's now part of the SecOps team. So he's actually there with his team for the same reason the Wreckers are, to prevent this Mayhem terrorist group from causing any harm during the Speedia 500. So he asked Circuit to have the Wreckers kind of back off so they can take care of it, and Circuit's like, well, I'll ask them, but I doubt they're going to listen to me. So at the end of the issue, Circuit actually follows Axer because he gets a little suspicious, and he finds him actually conversing with the terrorists, with Mayhem, I believe it was, and right after that happens, Circuit gets shot right in the face and is almost killed. So the Wreckers rush to his rescue and get him in a medical bay and kind of stabilize him, and just as the issue ends, the pandemonium that all this causes, the race is just about to begin. So the Wreckers and all the other participants get ready at the start line, and the start horn blasts right at the end of the issue. So the race has started. In issue 3, it's basically just the entire race. So we see the Wreckers, all the other participants racing. We see SecOps in the race. And suddenly the race is going along just fine until Mayhem and his goons show up on the track and start offing people. So all of this chaos ensues. SecOps gets involved. The Wreckers are involved. But in all the chaos between the two kind of factions that are trying to solve the problem of the terrorists, they're able to get away in the fray. And so the mission is basically dubbed a failure, as they've got a couple of dead bots, a couple of one in stasis lock, and a bunch of other injuries, and they have nothing to show for it. Nobody to put up on charges for all the pandemonium. So we will see if they can rebound and make good on that in the next issue. Next up, issue 4 of the Shattered Glass series, and this is the one where things are reversed. The Autobots are bad and the Decepticons are good. So at the end of the last issue, Starscream had been captured by Goldbug and Jetfire. Jetfire being the bot that Starscream used to work with way back in the day. So this one's all about Goldbug. Goldbug is Bumblebee reincarnated, and when Bumblebee got seriously injured, it's like the Autobots were more like the Decepticons, so nobody cared. He got fixed, but nobody's cared. Like, Bumblebee's a bitch, right? What a loser, getting himself hurt, the sort of thing. Nobody cared, right? So he rebranded himself Goldbug after he got fixed, and he's trying to basically prove his worth, and he's an angry little bot. So he is trying, alongside Jetfire, to extract the vital intel out of Starscream about the Titan head and all the Metroplex's head and all that stuff, but they can't. They got to be careful, because they can't. Goldbug just wants to off Starscream, but Jetfire warns, well, if we off him, all that information is lost. So this is very delicate. It could take some time, but Goldbug's just so goddamn impatient that he's kind of freaking out. And while this situation is going on, there goes into some backstory between tension between Bumblebee, Goldbug, and Optimus Prime, as well as some of the other Autobots that were mixed up in the whole thing, and along the way also there are some attacks on the facility, I think, for people trying to get Starscream back. So I forget how it ended, but yeah, basically Goldbug. Yeah, I think the Insecticons attacked to try and free Starscream, but it failed. And in the end, Goldbug's got his weapunda pointed at Starscream, saying, "Make my day, punk." Right? So things are coming to a head there. Last up, issue 37 of the regular Transformers series. And in this one, things have kind of shifted. The way the last one ended, the Sea of Rust started to crumble, and they lost the Enigma of combination in the Sea of Rust. It got destroyed, so everybody retreated. So this is kind of a fresh start on the continuing story here. Ultra Magnus and Optimus Prime are on a planet, and they're in this cave looking for a bot named Codexa, I believe it is. And she's in the cave, and she's all hooked up to machines, but she's all dilapidated and stuff. And they start telling her that Exarchon is back, and they start asking her about, like, what's his deal? What does he do? And she starts explaining that he corrupts other bots' sparks, which they can never recover from, and he can kind of occupy them, but he can only ever occupy up to 3 bots at a time. So they get all this information about Exarchon, who's back on the scene, and in order to try and gain an advantage in the oncoming fight against him, most likely. And also at the other time, Cyclonus is the other character involved in this story, and he's having a bunch of flashbacks back to the war, the end of the war, when all of the kind of Decepticons under his kind of command and stuff were all systematically wiped out in the war, and are the demons that he's living with, the ghosts that he's living with. So you get a bit of backstory into how that all came about. And in the end, the Decepticons figure out where Optimus and Ultra Magnus are in this cave, talking to Codexa. So they plan an assault, and they subdue all the Transformers, all the Autobots that are outside the cave guarding it. And as Ultra Magnus and Optimus Prime come out to this surprise, a big fight ensues, and all of the Autobots get away except for Ultra Magnus, who is ultimately subdued and under Decepticon captivity. So he looks to be in a spot of trouble. So we'll see what happens to him in the near future. Last Man Up, issue number 288 of the ongoing G.I. Joe series. And this is a issue that's focused mainly on Lieutenant Falcon. It flashes back to 15 years ago, from whenever this is supposed to take place, and showcases a young Vincent Falcone, who eventually becomes Lieutenant Falcon, as he is touring some sort of military installation with his class at school. And he takes the guy that's given the tour, this military commander, can see that he's kind of the kid in the group that is taking the most interest, so comes over and talks to him. And Vincent talks about how his father was a Green Beret and got killed in action and whatever. And the guy's like, "Oh, that must steer you away from the military, eh?" And Vincent's like, "Nope, just makes me want to become one myself and kick a little ass," right? So fast forward to current times, and there is a suit with a bunch of military high-ups and a chopper helicoptering into Bolivia, I believe it is, something like that, where he's explaining 3 soldiers have been taken captive and they need to get them back, and they're explaining to this suit that they've got the guy just for the job on the case right now, and it happens to be Lieutenant Falcon. But the guy asks, well, this installation is covered from the front by all sorts of weaponry and shielding and all sorts of stuff, and at the back it's inaccessible because it's unpassable marshland. Like, how is he going to do this? And they're like, don't you worry. So then the action shifts to the actual operation, and we see Lieutenant Falcon raid this installation and free these 3 soldiers, and then it's just the story of their escape from this installation to safety. And at the end of it, these 3 soldiers are offered a spot, roster spots on the G.I. Joe team. So I'm not sure. The only one I know who it is Law and Order. It was like a military policeman and his dog, Law and Order. They were, I had their toys, and I really liked those characters back in the day on the show. But I couldn't really tell who the other guys were. So that right there, I can't remember which one's which, but that's either Law or Order. And the dog is either Law or Order. I forget which is which. And then the other 2 guys there, I don't know which Joes they end up becoming. But overall, this issue ends up being like kind of an origin / backstory on Lieutenant Falcon, as well as an origin story, at least, on how those 3 soldiers become G.I. Joes, right? So I like the kind of the history aspect of it on how things came to be, right? I wish they would do more of that stuff for various characters. I think that's always kind of neat, right? So, but anyways, those are all the issues I have. I guess that was 8 in total. Lots of Transformers as usual, and just a bit of Turtles and G.I. Joe. Pretty steady that way. That's pretty consistent, but I'm assuming it's going to be more of the same in January, but we will find out and see, and we'll see where these adventures take us. So, until then.